Welcome to an episode of Behind the Scenes, a weekly program unveiling the biggest political developments in Somali politics. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and co-producer here on HORUFADHI Media alongside Suleiman Hashi. Of this week's program, the Somali Federal Parliament approved the new cabinet unveiled by Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre with an overwhelming majority, as only 7 MPs voted against and 229 MPs voted for. However, there have been criticisms from MPs and political analysts in the country as to how the cabinet was formulated. What are some of the issues being raised? Also on this program, is there a plan to replace federal member state leaders as Villa Somali appoints key opponents of federal member state leaders, just Qorqor, Laftagaren and Deni? These are the topics on the program today. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel, known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program, and where you can find other exclusive content such as the African Weekly Roundup, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment now. Let's get straight into it. It was on the 2nd of August when Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre showcased his new cabinet, which comprises of 75 ministers, deputy ministers and state ministers. A breakdown of these numbers is as follows: 26 actual cabinet ministers, 24 state ministers and 25 deputy ministers. In his opening speech at the event, Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre highlighted that he sought guidance and advice from various individuals and groups, including the President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, speakers of the Federal Parliament, both lower and upper, parliamentarians including MPs and senators, as well as civil society groups, for women, for certain different groups in society that require representation. Indeed, I'm sure you are all aware of the recent delays to the appointment of the cabinet, which surpassed the initial time frame and forced Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre to seek a 10-day extension. Now, the reasons for this were alleged to be misunderstandings between the Prime Minister, the President and the Speaker of the Lower House on the numbers of ministers and appointments. So the question arises, how much of an influence did President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud have in the appointment of Prime Minister Barre's cabinet? Reports vary, with some referring to 95%, whereas others referring to 80%. But what is clear is that many members of the cabinet are members of UPD party, ran by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. Roughly 20 out of the 26 cabinet members are reported to be key allies of the incumbent president. And I can give examples, for instance, Mahmoud Bene, a vocal opposition MP and now appointed Minister of Planning. Ahmed Fiqi, a controversial politician that was sacked as Galmudug Security Minister last year, is now appointed Interior Minister. Abdurrazak Umar Mohammed, another vocal opposition MP, previously served under the first Hassan Sheikh presidency and now is reappointed as Petroleum Minister. And Hassan Maalim, another vocal MP and an ally of Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. There's plenty more cabinet members we can talk about, but these are just some examples that we can refer to. It is reported also that Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre sought a much smaller cabinet with a higher quality, but the president rather wanted to incorporate more allies into his government as what one could perceive as rewards for loyalty. Now, while there was much talk about whether Parliament would approve the new cabinet over the days prior to the vote, which took place on August 7th, irrespective, Parliament voted overwhelmingly to approve the new cabinet, with 229 MPs voting in favour and only 7 voting against and 1 abstaining. There were scenes of commotion in Villa Hargeisa as a number of MPs that were opposed to the nominations attempted to table a motion which was denied by Speaker Madobe, according to reports, and this would ultimately result in a scuffle involving the police and would see items being thrown. Now, Speaker Madobe today has released a statement announcing that he set up a 5-member parliamentary committee to investigate the brawl and events that took place on that day. Now, one individual that has been on the limelight or in the spotlight, so to speak, in recent days, both locally and internationally, is the new Religious Affairs Minister, former Al-Shabaab Deputy Leader and spokesman Mukhtar Robo. Mukhtar has created a whirlwind among many Somali analysts that scratch their heads in surprise, whereas others have praised the decision as a possible avenue to counter Al-Shabaab propaganda. While it is possible for an individual to reform and change their ways, it is at the very minimum quite questionable to move somebody from the house arrest to a member of the cabinet. Indeed, there has not been actual physical evidence of Mr. Mukhtar even denouncing his beliefs. Of course, Robo denounced his former organization Al-Shabaab due to differences However, that does not necessarily mean that Mr. Mukhtar has now left behind his religious beliefs that he has adhered to for the majority of his life, even risking his life to follow what he believes. Let's take a slight overview actually, of the background of Robo. Now, Robo is one of the few Somalis that actually went to Afghanistan to train. And in an interview with Harun Maruf for his book Inside Al-Shabaab, The Secret History of Al-Qaeda's Most Powerful Ally, Mukhtar explained that he went to training in an Al-Qaeda camp in Afghanistan in the late 90s and early 2000s. And Mukhtar went on to explain how he met Osama bin Laden, admiring the former Al-Qaeda leader. In fact, he went so far as to provide a eulogy when bin Laden was assassinated by the United States government in 2011. Upon his return to Somalia, Robo served as a senior official in the Islamic Courts Union in the mid-2000s and was even part of the delegation that went to Khartoum during talks with the Somali government led by President Abdullah Yusuf. Now, following the defeat of the ICU, he would flee to Asmara before returning and joining the newly formed Al-Shabaab, being appointed spokesman in 2007 and remaining in the post until 2009. From 2009 onwards, it's reported Robo would become the deputy of the then Al-Shabaab leader Ahmed Abdi Godane, and this was not officially announced or officially made public, but many analysts do believe this was the case. In June 2012, the US government placed a $5 million bounty on him, and by 2013, Robo was among a number of senior Al-Shabaab officials that were discontent with the leadership style of Godane. The clash would see Godane begin assassinating critics within Al-Shabaab, including Al-Ameriki, for instance, and others, which would be killed by Al-Shabaab militants throughout that period. Even Robo himself was also attacked in his camp in Bakol. Now, on August 15, 2017, Mukhtar would come in front of the Somali public and explain he had left Al-Shabaab 5 years earlier due to this very internal rift, and he would be detained in 2018 by Farmajo's administration as he tried to run for the office of presidency of Southwest State only a year after his amnesty was granted. And he would remain in this position until this year, when the Prime Minister appointed him as the Minister for Religious Affairs. Now, during his tenure in Al-Shabaab, major attacks were carried out that killed dozens of people, including ministers and civilians. The biggest and the most famous is the 2009 bombing of a university graduation ceremony in Mogadishu, which saw 22 individuals killed, including ministers, students, and journalists. There were clips, in fact, circulated online of Mukhtar instructing Al-Shabaab militants under his command not to leave a single individual that's wounded alive, and he wanted every single individual dead, and that is quite a shocking statement to hear. Now, it is difficult to see how such an individual could so easily give up such strong beliefs that have dictated his life for so long. While it is possible to reform, it would require more time to entrust such an individual with such a senior ministerial position, and it is very risky, to say the least. Another individual that has raised an eyebrow is Dr. Ali Haji Aden, who was appointed the health minister. Now, Mr. Aden became a member of parliament in April of this year before being given this position. A video circulated only days after his election where he was speaking at an Al-Shabaab event in Al Ali district of Hiran, in which he praised the group. However, speaking to VOA Somali, Dr. Ali defended himself, saying that the video circulating on social media was only a short clip and not the entire video. He explained that he attended an event for a school and brought with him science teachers, and he was a doctor himself. And he elucidated that he said he was under duress and was simply terrified to offend his hosts. He also denied any links to Al-Shabaab. Now, finally, let's take a look at some of the appointments and the way they may affect the relationship between the federal government and federal member states, because we've already seen this happening with Southwest states. Let's take a look at some of the states which this affects. We'll begin with Galmudug. Ahmed Fiqi, who was previously regional security minister before being sacked by Qorqor for his support for Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Now, this individual, Fiqi, has continuously condemned Qorqor ever since and has been his fiercest critic as of late, and therefore his appointment can be considered a poke at the Galmudug leader and could potentially be Villa Somalia's candidate to replace Qorqor during the Galmudug elections that should be coming up very soon. And this obviously could create more a rift, so to speak, between Galmudug and the federal government, which of course, that's going to exacerbate the longer this minister remains in office. Southwest states, and as you probably all are aware, the rift between Baydhabo and Mogadishu has been sour since the appointment of Robo as a minister. Now, Mukhtar previously attempted to compete against Laftagareen during the state elections in 2018, only to be detained by the FMS administration for security reasons. He obviously was an extremist spiritual leader and had a large following and a militia in Bacol. And recent actions by politicians from Southwest State in Mogadishu that are supporters of Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud indicate that there is a plan to remove Laftagareen in exchange for Mukhtar Robo. And finally, Puntland. Villa Somalia appointed Abshir Omar as foreign minister. Now, Mr. Omar previously served as the Secretary General of the main opposition party in Puntland, Mideye, and Mideye defeated Deni's incumbent political party during the 2021 direct elections that happened in a number of districts, including Qardo district, among other places. Now, with Gero elections looming in the horizon, it seems as though Villa Somalia may have another candidate in store there as well. So what we can see, the common theme here is that Hassan Sheikh's team have appointed certain ministers into senior positions that are directly opposed or are directly in opposition to certain federal member states that Hassan Sheikh's team might feel like they don't have a good relationship with. For instance, Laftagareen, of course, had a very excellent relationship with Farmacho. Qorqor, a similar situation there. And of course, with Deni, there's been a rift ever since the election, the appointment of Hamza Abdi Barre as Prime Minister. So for Hassan Sheikh, it seems as though that he's appointing certain individuals to counter, or so to speak, the animosity that he may receive from these certain federal member states, I assume. Irrespective, however, we have to see what comes out of this new government. And they have the mandate from Parliament, and they must now deliver on what they've pledged. In next week's episode, do tune in, and we will be assessing the major tasks facing this new government.